Hey, friends. Thanks again to all those who have been joining us in our daily readings from the Gospel of Luke here in the months of January and February with Faith United Methodist Church. And if you persevered with us this far, we hope that you'll continue to persevere. We're now in week 7. The readings beginning February 17th, and we're moving into Holy Week, the last week of Jesus' life, as Luke records it. And it starts out on such a high note, a triumphant entry. Here Jesus comes in just like the prophet Zechariah said the Messiah would, riding on the donkey, people shouting in the streets and welcoming him. This big crowd of people from out there in Galilee who's come with him and are so excited about his arrival, his entry, and all that might portend for God's people. But things change. They can change pretty quickly, and Jesus' fortunes change so quickly in that Holy Week, so that by the end of our readings this week from Luke, he'll be on the eve of his crucifixion, right? So a lot of the time that's spent is Jesus in the temple, right? He comes in and everybody would have expected him to go in and set about kicking out the Romans, because that's what they thought the Messiah would do. But again, instead, Jesus chooses to clean house in the temple, which is a little hard for them to understand. The teachers there get into all sorts of arguments. They try to ask Jesus gotcha questions, and he is able to rebuff them all. It says once or twice in there that no one dared ask him any more questions after some of the responses that he gave them. And, not being able to best him in an argument, they decide to try to challenge his authority to say these things like, who do you think you are? And at one point in Luke's gospel, they say, do you think you are the Son of God? And Jesus says, you are correct in saying that I am. And so their accusation that they're going to hurl against Jesus is that he is a blasphemer. And if he is not who he says he is, if he does not have all the authority of God to say what he says and do what he does, then he was a blasphemer. But we as Christians believe he was not, that he was the real deal. And that's where we stake our claim. That he was the Son of God didn't mean that he had all the favors in the world coming his way, as we see in the readings this week. He faced a lot of false accusations, being treated like a criminal. Probably most painful, the crowds that came from Galilee, they dissipated and were replaced by angry crowds in Jerusalem. But probably most disappointingly to him were even his closest friends, the disciples with whom he had shared life. They all either ran away or denied him or betrayed him in that last week of his life. Kind of reminds me a bit of what Martin Luther King Jr. said, that he said that in the end, what we'll remember most is not the, something to the effect of, we won't remember the angry yelling of our enemies, but we'll remember the silence of our friends. That would be the most painful thing. So that had to be hard on the Lord. And yet in the readings this week, he celebrates a final Passover meal with them. And he spends that time, and he reinterprets this most holy meal in Judaism to be about himself. He says, when you take this bread, you're taking my body, broken for you, for your sake and for your salvation. My body is given. So feast on me in your hearts and take strength to follow me. And, when the supper was over, he took the cup and said, This wine is my blood, poured out for you, for many, for the forgiveness of sins. And every time you drink this, remember me. Take me into your presence. So it is wild. In the United Methodist Church, we practice an open table, and we say that everybody is welcome to receive the gifts of bread and juice that represent Christ's body and blood, but not because we're spectacularly worthy, but just because unworthy company is the only kind that Jesus ever had, including at that first Holy Communion, the Lord's Supper. And you'll read about it this week in Luke, and read about how Jesus was anguished in the garden. You begin to read all that he suffered. But pray that you'll keep reading, because though the suffering is great and will continue into next week's readings, there is redemption on the other side. And I give thanks for it.